Wait for Rich to sit. Good evening and welcome to the February 6, 2018 meeting of the Town of Wareham Board of Selectmen, where you have a roll call, please.
President is Selectman Scasiotti, Selectman Tropiano, Selectman Slavin, Selectman Titlebaum, Town Administrator Derek Sullivan, Town Council Richard Bowen.
Okay, Pledge of Allegiance. Sue, why don't you lead us? Thank you. Announcements, Selectman Tropiano,
No, nothing right now, thanks.
Selectman Scasiotti,
No.
okay,
Nothing.
Clerk Slavin.
Let's see what we got. Go for it. Wareham Historical Society has Sweethearts Dinner. It's on the 10th at 6 p.m., and it's $15 a person. On the 19th of this month, Nancy Rice will be doing a presentation on the First Ladies, presidential First Ladies. That will be at 7 p.m. And another thing, we have in Wareham, one of the town employees' grandmother is 107 years old tomorrow, Mary Mendez. We'd like to basically reach out and wish her a happy birthday. We've got a card that we've signed. We'll be delivering it tonight for her birthday tomorrow. She obviously has children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. I think she even has great-great-grandchildren. She's probably the oldest person in town at this point in time. But it's pretty amazing because I've seen her around and she does move around and she's very viable. Anybody want to say anything besides happy birthday?
Impressive.
God
Okay.
bless her.
What's her secret?
Cranberries.
Cranberries. Okay, then. Raw or,
I'm not getting into that.
okay, then. Any other announcements?
Yes. The only other thing is we had, today there was 2 meetings of the Cannabis Control Commission, one in Hyannis, then another one in Dartmouth. These meetings were really just public hearings to take input from citizens. There was no questions answered. There was no back and forth. It was strictly people basing just their opinions of what they thought and didn't think. I was surprised by the number of farmers who showed up at both meetings looking for the marijuana to be available to grow, et cetera. That's the first time I've seen the farmers come out in such a large number, all looking for that. And there was probably more in favor than against, which kind of surprised me because there was a big article, I think, on the Cape Cod Times or whatever, saying there was going to be like 1,000 signatures for people who didn't want anything on the Cape, and it didn't materialize at all. The only thing that we were able to deduct from there, I was able to get a hold of one of the 2 commissioners. I got there early, and I asked specifically one question that I haven't been able to answer with anybody, is if the town of Wareham goes through the planning board, because the Board of Selectmen doesn't do this, the 20% of basically the license package to us, it would be 2.6 licenses for the retail. I've never seen a 0.6 business before. So normally we would figure how it would work, but when I asked the question, it really wasn't there. But when I finished asking stuff, the decision really was that we should go for 3. So when we get to it, we'll be recommending a minimum of 3, and then it's up to the planning board how many they want to go from there. But the minimum can be no lower than 3. That's it.
Yeah, further in that regard, on the marijuana licensing issue, there will be a public hearing next Monday, the 12th, with the planning board at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
And if anybody who's interested in that, they're encouraged to attend. Tonight, we will be reviewing and voting on a couple of articles to be brought forward there. The purpose of the public hearing is to solicit input about the articles, get some understanding about the articles. The town meeting that will deal with this is a special town meeting for March 12th at 7 PM. So we're actually going to have two special town meetings, one within the regular annual spring town meeting, and a second one just to deal with these marijuana licensing issues. So as you can hear from Clerk Slavin's almost weekly reports on this, this thing has been a tennis ball, and it's been a long rally. It's gone back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I never knew that 2.6 could be such a hard thing for people to figure out sitting on a state commission, and yet here we are. I don't know, when I was in second grade, they told me round up. If you're at half, you round it up. I guess these people didn't get through second grade. Citizens' comments. Is there anybody who'd like to speak to the board tonight? Okay, seeing none. Appointments, reappointments. We have one.
Make a motion to appoint Marcia Rossman of Onset, Mass. And the appointment is to expire March 31st, 2021. And it is actually, well, it's not written down here what it's for, but it's for...
I think it's Marcia.
Masha,
No, it says Marcia here.
really? It's Masha.
Okay,
That's the alternate spelling.
I will change that.
Marcia, Marcia, Marcia.
And that is for the, I think it's a registrar.
Is she here?
appointment. I don't think so.
No, this is just a routine.
It's a reappointment.
Oh.
It's the registrar reappointment.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, but there's a couple of mistakes on this one. That's my motion.
Motion by Clerk Slavin, seconded by Selectman Tropiano. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 400. Thank you, Marcia, for stepping up once again. Let's see, licenses and permits. We have an application for change of manager, Point Independence Yacht Club. Is there anybody here from the Yacht Club tonight? Good evening. If you'll come up, identify yourself.
Forgot mine tonight.
Okay, we can share.
My name is Chris Cuppins, 133 Onset Ave, member of the Point Independence Yacht Club, member of the board of directors here.
So you won the contest.
Yeah.
Everything's here and in place. Anybody have any questions?
No.
Make a motion for change of management to Christopher Cuppins, Kuppens, as bar manager for the next 2 years.
Second.
Okay, motion for change of manager by Clerk Slavin, seconded by Selectman Tropiano. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, abstained, 400. Thank you, as I'm sure your club members are thanking you for stepping up,
Yeah.
running it, and the paperwork will be available in the office tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Good evening.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay,
This is the one here you have to sign.
let's see. Next up, town business, vote to adopt smelt regulations. Is the harbor master here to tell us once again about the smelt regulations that we vote every year?
Doesn't look like it.
He's sitting silently.
He's fine.
He's here for another article, but that's...
The same thing we always do.
Sorry about that. We're only allowed to embarrass him one time a night.
Were you sleeping back there?
No, sorry.
Okay. That's okay.
Skip it.
Now that we thoroughly embarrassed you, tell us what we're doing here.
Well, I believe we're speaking about the community preservation application?
No, smelt regulations.
No, regulations, I thought you already passed it. We already have the stuff.
We haven't voted on it yet. We're about to.
Okay, I wasn't here for the smelt regulations.
Ah.
You can sit-
I was here for something else.
You can go sit down. Go find
Any changes to the smelt regulations?
There are no changes to the smelt regulations.
And it's a good thing you're here to tell us that, at
Move
least.
approval.
Would you like me-
Okay.
Would you like me to read what it is?
You want to
first?
read it? Go ahead.
Sure,
read
we'll
it.
read it.
You're going to read the whole regulation?
No.
Oh, it's a small thing. Smelt regulations as authorized by Chapter 67 of the Acts of 1931 to take smelt from the Wewianick River between March 1st, 2018, April 1st, 2018, both dates inclusive for family use subject to the following regulations. Limit 36 fish per day. Net size shall not contain more than 5 square feet of net surface. It is understood and agreed by the permit holder that he or she will abide by all laws and regulations of the state of Massachusetts pertaining to the catch of smelt. Fishing is allowed 7 days a week. Application to the town of Wareham only. Permits to the inhabitants of the towns of Wareham, Rochester, Marion, Mattapoisett. No charge for the permit, and there's a little note, landowner not responsible for any damages to person or property, violation or abuse of privileges hereby granted, shall in revocation of this permit in addition to any fines. This is my voice.
Okay, we have a motion. Who seconded?
I did.
Patrick.
Okay, Clerk Slavin, motion, seconded by Selectman Tropiano. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain. Once again.
Well, thank you.
I'll see you
You
shortly.
go back to sleep. We'll wake you up in a little bit. Let's see. We have a request from the Church of the Good Shepherd to place signs on town property for their spring and fall rummage sales and their annual Christmas fair.
A
Have it
little
there?
early for Christmas, isn't it?
No,
Well, they're just doing it all at once, which is
Good idea.
a good idea.
So, Church of the Good Shepherd, 74 High Street, Wareham, seeking permission to put up signs for 3 different fundraising events throughout the year of 2018. For these events, they would like to put up 6 to 12 long signs and 1 larger sign at various locations. Thank you, Derek, around town.
Thank you.
We will remove all signs after each event. Our church guild will hold 2 rummage sales, spring and fall, on May 5th, October 13th. These will be held at the church hall. We will also have our annual Christmas fair on December 1st at the church hall. That's my motion.
Okay.
Second?
Motion to approve sign placement by Clerk Slavin, seconded by Selectman Tropiano. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, abstains, unanimous, 400. Next up, vote to establish dates and notice of intent for the 2018 spring special town meeting warrant.
Okay.
Want me to read those out?
Yeah, if you'd like to. Maybe a speed reading special.
No.
There's nothing to
Just
say.
to read it a little bit slowly.
No, I go,
Town of Wareham, Board of Selectmen, 54 Marion Road, Wareham, Massachusetts, 02571. Notice of April 23rd, 2018 special town meeting, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Plymouth Shire Town, to either of the constables of the town of Wareham, in the name of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and in accordance with the provisions of Division 1, Article 1, Section 3 of the bylaws of the town of Wareham amended, you are hereby directed to notify and warn the legal voters of the town that a special town meeting has been called by the Board of Selectmen and held at 7:30 p.m. on Monday, April 23rd, 2018, at which time the business of the town meeting shall be transacted. The last day for submission of articles to be inserted in the warrant is Thursday, March 15th, 2018. Petition articles will be accepted up until 5 p.m. The warrant for this meeting will close on Tuesday, March 20th, 2018, and you are hereby directed to serve this notice by posting attested copies thereof in at least one public place in each precinct within the town on or before Friday, March 23rd, 2018. Hereof fail not and make due return of this posting with your doings thereon to the town clerk, given under our hands at Wareham the 6th day of February in the year 2018. Wareham Board of Selectmen, Peter W. Titlebaum, Alan H. Slavin, Patrick G. Tropiano, Anthony R. Scarziotti.
second.
Second.
That's your motion, I just read it.
Okay.
And it's your second.
This,
Okay. Motion by Clerk Slavin, seconded by Selectman Scarziotti. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. That's it. That means we will actually be holding the typical annual special, it's not annual. We do it within the regular town meeting. This is for things that come in late that perhaps we want people to spend a little more time considering as opposed to putting it on the regular warrant, and also allows articles that are voted on to spend money. The money is immediately available instead of waiting for the fiscal year. So it's a good thing to have as a tool to shorten the time frame. Let's see. Continue discussion for potential spring town meeting articles. Why don't we start with the community preservation ones? Do we have a particular order we want to do here? Good evening.
Good evening. Sandy Slavin, co-chair CPC.
Brian Litchfield, co-chair, CPC.
Hey, thank you for coming. I see you've got these all in your typical and usual format of numbering them, so we'll just go through them one at a time. The first one is to transfer $89,196.62 to the Community Preservation Open Space Reserve Fund account from the Tweedy and Barnes Preserve Central Corridor Edition Fall 2014 Town Meeting Article Number 28, and to transfer $4705 to the Community Preservation Undesignated Fund account from the Westfield Softball Bleachers Special Spring 2017 Town Meeting Article Number 17, or to do or act in any manner relative thereto.
And this is special spring, because we'd like to have that transfer done before the end of the fiscal year.
That's fine. It'll go on the special, should we so vote. Any particular explanation for this, other than the money didn't get spent?
The Wareham Land Trust had gone out for a grant request for that Tweedy Barnes Central Corridor. They received it, so they didn't need to spend all of the money that had been approved for that project, and they're returning it to us
Okay.
to use for another project, which is coming up.
Questions from the board?
Make a
Motion?
motion to go ahead and include that for the warrant. Town meeting warrant.
On the special, yep. Motion
the
by Clerk
special.
Slavin,
Second.
seconded by Selectman Scasiotti. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 400. Thank you. And next on the hit parade, we have number 2, to see if the town will vote to transfer $20,000 to the Community Preservation Undesignated Fund account from the Historic District Mapping Spring 2011 Town Meeting Article Number 35, and to transfer $50,000 to the Community Preservation Undesignated Fund account from the Digitizing Historic Records Fall 2009 Town Meeting Article Number 10, or to do or act in any manner relative thereto. Could you explain these and their apparent age?
We were looking at what was open and had no activity on it, and a couple attempts for the last couple of years to send emails out to people who had been interested in these came back with no response. Or for the historic district, oh, we're close to getting a survey done, but that was 2 years ago and it hasn't happened. We've heard nothing. So we'd like to return the funds to CPC, and if they want to do it, I think maybe come back with a more current estimate for the cost of it, and for digitizing the article was set for digitizing the clerk and assessor's data, old data records. And again, reaching out several times, no responses, no activity. We think the funds should be returned to CPC and have someone take a hard look at really what they really want done with the old records in those two departments. And I expect 50,000 would probably no longer cover it, since it's been estimated some time ago.
Okay. Question?
Just a quick comment. It's really unfortunate that we haven't been able to do this, because this is being required by the state to digitize records, et cetera. And, well, 2009, it's probably $100,000 or more now. Well, hopefully they'll come back, because we have to do this whether we like it or not.
It is well within the scope of CPC, but at what point do we continue to hold the money and not utilize it?
Understand?
Yep.
It's not even enough money.
Not anymore.
Could very well be.
Yep.
Who requested it originally?
I believe it came from Nan Miller
Yeah, I think it did.
as a CPC requested article.
Okay.
Okay.
I meant the,
Make a motion
Yes.
to accept CPC-2.
Second.
As special spring.
Special spring town meeting.
Yep. Okay, motion, put CPC 2 on the special spring town meeting warrant by Clerk Slavin, seconded by Selectman Scasiotti. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain. At this point, I do want to thank you for digging through the old records and finding money. Next up.
We're just trying to clean it up.
Yep.
Well, it's new to us. CPC 3, to see if the town will vote to appropriate from the Community Preservation Open Space Reserve Fund or any other available monies in the Community Preservation Fund under the category of open space recreation to grant the Wareham Land Trust up to the sum of $91,500 to purchase the property shown on the Assessor's Map 83, Lot 1019, and further to authorize the Board of Selectmen and the Conservation Commission to acquire, on behalf of the town, a permanent conservation restriction on the land to be known as Stony Run Preserve, or to do or act in any manner relative thereto.
Now, if you have any questions, we have Wareham Land Trust officers here, if you have any questions on this particular project.
Yeah, I saw they brought in an exhibit.
Yes.
So rather than not see the exhibit, why don't we bring it up and put it on the camera?
Because they got some news that a piece of land very close to this has recently become part of their land holdings, and it just makes a nice corridor. So I think the public would be interested to see what has been obtained. So if one of you need to get in front of the microphone here.
Yes, tell us about this parcel.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
So it's a very nice parcel. You'll see it at the top of the map. It says Stony Run, 600 Main Street. So it's right off of Main Street. It is very close to the town conservation land. And that Stony Run Scout parcel, that was just given to us by the Boy Scout Association. It's 13+ acres. So this makes a very nice corridor. Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program declares this an area of critical habitat. It runs, that Stony Run is a stream that runs into Broad Marsh. So it's a very nice area, right near some residential areas, so right off of Main Street, people would be able to access it. It lends itself nicely to some trails and things like that. So, we think it would be a very nice little 6.63 piece of acre of land to preserve. We have a letter from Bill Napolitano at Serpent, who also agrees that this would be a nice piece of land to preserve because it attaches to all of those other pieces and because it runs into Broad Marsh. So it's a very nice area for flood mitigation if that were something to happen.
And for cost-wise, with the return of the $89,000 from the Tweedy corridor, it would only be less than $3,000 out of CPA funds to obtain this piece of property.
And we will be doing fundraising, and we are looking at a grant that will be coming up that we will apply for. So again, if we get money from other places, like the grant that we'll be applying for, or from fundraising, we would return whatever.
Okay. Questions from the board?
Oh, it seems a $3,000 cost for the parcel, really, in the end result?
At the
At the
net
end
result,
result.
yes.
With the return from the prior project.
It's a 96,000, 93.
91.
What's the town
91.
administrator think? Is there a
92.
problem with this?
We'd talked
Which
about this
taxes do
one
we lose?
before. This one with the National Heritage, what did the, what do you call it? The, not the assessment, but the, yeah, what did the, was 86? And within National Heritage, I mean, there's not much that can be done, maybe one single-family house on there. So,
One house?
yeah, so,
They could, depending upon who the builder is, rather they come in with a 40B and put a couple of family house on the multifamily.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
Yeah, you've got to come up and use the
Well, that's a good
microphone,
point.
Nancy.
That's a good point.
Yeah, Nancy McCarroll, treasurer of Wareham Land Trust. Depends upon who the builder is that would buy the property. They could always come in with a 40B and probably put a multifamily house on it.
Do those 40B duplexes, you know?
yeah.
Yeah, something like that. But again, this is all about preserving
What do you want to
the
do?
quality of that stream, for as much as we can. There are the fish species and eels that come up that stream to spawn. So we thought that that's cooking space and flooding. There's a type of fish that depend on freshwater and saltwater, and having habitat for that type of fish is getting very difficult. Won't go through the scientific names and all of that, but this would be a great opportunity to save habitat for that type of fish. It's an important fish.
That mic is off.
No,
It's not, it's on? It wasn't up high enough, because they can't hear it at home. Somebody just texted me.
Oh, okay.
It says,
Yeah,
can't
could you
hear
repeat everything you said? No, that's good.
You have to get close to the little foam bud or else.
I think the best piece that's interesting about this piece of land is that it's so accessible right off of Main Street and for residents in the area, and we could put some nice trails in there and be easily accessible to people from town.
That's really, if you're seeking my, that's what I would really love to see as a plan on that, if we were going to purchase it. Because I think, I believe in the trails, especially right by residential. I believe it brings up the values and such. This sounds crazy, even before coming back to community preservation for funds and such, I'd love to see that, because we have a hard time, as we've talked about before, maintaining trails or, so making that an active trail site would be pretty great for the neighborhoods.
And you and I had a conversation conversation
Yeah.
in November about trails and all of that.
Right.
And we've been working really closely with Dave Bichette and
Good.
Gary Buckminster on some of the town-owned trails and things like that. And we always have, but we've been doing that a lot this fall. And what we'll do, as part of our accreditation from the Land Trust Alliance, we are an accredited land trust, we have to have a plan for any land that we purchase. So they need to, we need to do monitoring, and we need to have a plan for, the maintenance of that and all of that. So I don't know if you would want us to get you that beforehand, because we're kind of in a time crunch right now, but we definitely will be working, that's something
No,
we would do
it's-
anyway.
I think you saying that you're going to do it's good enough for me.
Yeah,
You know, that's,
yeah, several hundred people just heard you, so
And they do it for every piece of property they own.
we're pretty good.
I think there's just the one that texted
Yeah.
me was watching.
I get it. I'm just giving you a hard time.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, it's assessed at $117,500, so you're talking $1,100, $1,200 a year would be the, and frankly, if you did some nice trails and you had some active
It's
people.
worth it, probably.
Yeah, it would bring it up from the
Yeah,
surrounding.
plus a net of
parcels.
$3,000, I mean,
It's not.
in the end result.
Everybody all done?
well, as certainly, I think the co-chairman of the CPC know, initially I was against this, and I still may not be necessarily all that ardent about it when it comes time to recommend this property. One of the things we've seen in town over the entire time the Community Preservation Act has been adopted and in place, there has been a bit of an imbalance between land acquisitions and the other allowable uses. And I think at some point, we have to start turning things around. We have to start reinvesting in town properties. And believe me, this is no jab at the Land Trust. They do a great job with the properties they have. But going forward, we're going to have to take a hard look at what the priorities are here. Do we take the money and improve already acquired properties? Do we take the money and improve municipal buildings? Do we take the money and continue to buy open space? These are things people need to think about, not on an article-by-article basis, but almost on a decade-by-decade basis, and just to figure out how they want their town to look in 10 or 20 years. And that's pretty much one of the issues I did have with it. The other thing is we had requested originally that we wait for the master plan to be done. It was pointed out to me that the open space plan does contain this recommendation.
And in December, we received the initial approval by the state in our open space plan. So for a couple tweaks here and there, the open space plan is done for the next 7 years.
Okay, you did get that.
We got it in late December, yes.
Former Selectman Whiteside will be very pleased. Okay, I guess that's enough. Unless you folks have anything else to say?
Just one point.
Motion?
Special spring.
What Peter's trying to talk about is we've just had some discussions internally. We're a little concerned about some of the larger acreage of land, disappearing very quickly all over town for future development. So that's one of the reasons that we're looking at the master plan very carefully, because we're not looking at a year or 2 years, you're looking 5, 10, 15, and 20 years. If the town wants to expand, if we want to increase our economic development potential, we have to have land available that works. I don't see any issue with this particular one, but, it's important that we realize that there's only just so much land that's buildable, and we have to be very careful what we do going forward. I'll make a motion to accept CPC-3 for the special Springtown meeting.
Second.
Okay, motion to put CPC 3 on the special, you'll get the money right away if they vote for it, by Clerk Slavin, and seconded by Selectman Scasiotti. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 400. And I guess that's that. Thank you very much from the Land Trust. Do you always wear your uniforms when you come in?
She bought the jacket, too.
This is my Wareham Land Trust uniform.
There you go. It fits you well.
Thank you both.
Thanks. Next up, CPC 4, restoration of Tremont Nail Freight Building. See if the town will vote to appropriate from the Community Preservation Undesignated Fund or any other monies available in the Community Preservation Fund under the category of historical preservation, a grant to the town of Wareham up to the sum of $200,000 for the restoration of the freight building at the Tremont Nail property, or to do or act in any manner relative thereto. Is there an issue with the up to the sum of?
Mr. Chairman, as long as the words "up to" do not appear in the motion, it's fine.
Okay.
learned
I
my
do
lesson.
notice that in the draft,
Yes.
Yep. I just want to get that out there, just in case we forget in a town meeting, do a strange appropriation, and then somebody says, but wait a minute.
So you gotta
It
change
is
the
there,
motion.
it needs to be removed from the motion.
Yeah.
I thought that was just a test.
It was a test.
The freight building was looked at during the Mendes, Torres, and Spencer report in 2009, and it was recommended that there's several things be done to maintain, to restore, and to preserve that particular freight building. Several years ago, the town voted CPA funds to redo the roof, and now they're looking for, the town, being Mr. Sullivan, is looking for funds to continue to preserve and restore that particular building. This is just the external framework that's being worked on. And I understand that there is a grant being requested by Mr. Buckland for, what, another $200,000 for this particular building, is that right? And what they were looking for was for CP matching or funds being committed by the town to work on the same structure, is that correct? They were looking to see if the town would step up and put up our money.
This allows us to use the CPC funds as matching funds as well. They could be considered
So
matching.
it could very well be as much as $400,000, which would allow that building to be expanded into having some plumbing and its internal work on that structure, if it's my understanding.
And I apologize for the worst handwritten application.
I have it in case someone wanted to see the scribbles. It was nothing but circles.
You're subject to blackmail now. Any questions from the board?
Just a comment again, so the public understands, because Tremont Nail always brings people quite nervous when we say we're spending money on the facility. We have upland there, which we can develop. We've talked about it for quite a while, with potential housing by close to the railroad tracks, et cetera. We had an event there this past year, which was very successful, and it just gave us an idea that that piece of property, very much like the Box Mill over at AD Makepeace, which gets rented out all the time. This facility is what we're looking at. I know the Wareham Community Associates, we're talking about possibly doing an event this year there. A couple other groups are also looking at it. I'm still talking about the drive-in movie car show for possibly August this year. So I think this gives us a good shot at getting this piece of property moving along and actually doing something with it instead of just throwing money at it to keep it from falling down.
And when the fish are running right next to that building on the water, it's one of the neatest things. It's just side-to-side fish, so.
Yeah. Especially
Any other
with the storm.
questions? Okay, we have a motion, please.
Motion to accept Article CPC-4, Special Spring Town Meeting.
Second.
Okay, motion for CPC 4 by Clerk Slavin, seconded by Selectman Scasiotti. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Unanimous, including the reluctant aye.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you for your work on this, Mr. Sullivan, and thank you to the Community Preservation Committee. CPC 5, this is for the spring 2018 regular town meeting, to see if the town will vote to reserve for future appropriation from Community Preservation Funds fiscal year 2019 estimated annual revenues, the following amounts. 1, $45,000 for administrative expenses. 2, $90,000 to open space reserves. 3, $90,000 to historical preservation reserves. And 4, $90,000 to affordable housing reserves or to do or act in any manner relative thereto. This is just an annual article. We have to allocate at least 10% to each of the 3 allowable uses under the Community Preservation Act. We can't just slap it all into one thing.
And I did reach out to Mr. Foster, and he suggested I use $900,000 as a benchmark for my 10% allocation.
Okay.
We were a little light one of the years or something, wasn't there something like that?
Say that again?
Were we a little light on one of the estimates
A
once?
couple
or-
years ago, we were.
Yeah.
I've not seen the numbers for FY18 yet because we have the state match.
Right.
But I haven't seen the town numbers, so he suggested that I go a little stronger than I was originally estimating.
Okay, good.
Nice number.
So it
Okay.
makes no difference if
Usually
we,
good to take
if
his
we have to
advice.
do 9, we have to do 10%, but if it turns out to be 12 or 11%, no be, you know,
Yep.
All right,
yeah.
Fine.
thank you.
Questions? No? Motion, please?
Motion, we accept Article CPC-5 as spring town meeting, not special.
Second.
Okay, motion to put CPC 5 on the Springtown meeting warrant by Clerk Slavin, seconded by Selectman Scasiotti. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstains, 400, unanimous. Thank you. Let's see. CPC 6, Wesley United Methodist Church, to see if the town will vote to appropriate from the Community Preservation Undesignated Fund or any other monies available in the Community Preservation Fund under the category of historical preservation, a grant to the Wesley United Methodist Church of Wareham up to the sum of $142,750 to fund the exterior restoration and preservation of the church building located at 462 Main Street, Wareham, and to receive a historical preservation restriction on the property or take any action relative thereto.
The applicants are here if you'd like to have, to speak to them and with any questions you may have.
Yeah, that would be good. Come on up.
Before they sit down from CPC, got a question.
Hmm?
Brian? On restoring church, like we have some issues we've had before, the restoration of buildings.
Yep.
If we were to use CPC money for historical restoration, are we allowed to use vinyl siding to repair a building?
I don't believe so. That hasn't come up.
I'm just asking
I think
because,
Attorney Bowen may have looked into that question.
the reason I'm asking is, we have the issue, but if there's a way to save money and get a better product.
Yeah. I know there was conversation at one point about, I mean, as long as it looked aesthetically historical, that it was acceptable, but I don't know what the final outcome was.
Just
as to-
asking, that's all. Thank you.
Well, I'll put it through to town council then.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's nothing in the Community Preservation Act itself that specifies or prohibits the particular type of siding material that would be used. So I think that would be within the discretion of the committee to determine what would be historically appropriate for the setting.
Thank you.
Okay. Questions?
No, not right now. I don't really. I want to say, I'll tell you what, let me just do this. All right, so, originally, we had issues because there was a case in Acton that was ongoing, and they're waiting for a decision, and this decision seems like it's never going to come. I don't know what takes these courts so long to make these decisions. I mean, the hearing's been over for quite a while. But so I decided to look the case up, and I have the case in front of me, and I looked it up, and what I found is the thing that interested me the most was they requested a preliminary injunction, so they couldn't spend the money. And the court made an interesting ruling, which I think we all should pay attention to. The court basically ruled that the purpose of CPA grant was not to aid the churches, hold on, I got to go back and forth, aid the church, but specifically for acquisition, preservation, rehabilitation, and restoration of the historic resource. Additionally, the court found that there was no credible evidence that the grant under CPA were economically or politically abusive or unfair, arguing that CPA funds were issued without regards to the applicant's makeup or purpose, which I'm sure they were. Furthermore, they found that the town of Acton issuance of the grant was made after an assessment of how to best use public funds and to evaluate the legitimacy of the public, which is your board, obviously, your committee, right? And therefore, the injunction is denied. The preliminary injunction was denied at the request of the plaintiffs because it says here, there was no likelihood they would succeed in their suit. So that's very interesting. It's funny, you have to go look at these things sometimes, to really know what's going on. But it seems to me that their court was pretty clear right from the beginning that the likelihood of them succeeding is pretty slim because of the way they acted, the way it was done in front of a board, the whole thing, and what I just read. So I don't think that really plays any role any longer, in my opinion.
Yeah.
In my opinion. I think that sort of ends the whole idea of, you know, I don't think they're going to win the case.
No, it's a tough hurdle because, you know, I don't think anybody, you know, you're not going to use, hey, we've got a newly sided building to recruit more people into your church building.
Exactly.
I don't see that as a big winner. It's the quality of the people in the church that typically get more parishioners. Yeah, I'm aware of that. You know, I had said in the past I'd rather wait for the decision. My feeling is even if this is voted on favorably at town meeting, we should probably wait for the decision before any money is dispersed. So I think that is something for perhaps the town meeting motion. Regarding the amount, I do have a bit of an issue with that. I do think vinyl siding would suit you better in the long run. You don't have to paint it, you don't have to maintain it, you put it on, it's good for a good 40 years. My concern would be that if we spend $142,000 now on wood siding, that in 15 years, knowing how paint doesn't stick to anything in a salty air environment, you're gonna be stuck coming back here to do it again. So that would be my big concern.
I have a hard time with this, mainly because the church does so much good things for the town of Wareham, number one, which most people don't understand. And we've done the wigwam and onset twice. We've done the congregational church once. And now all of a sudden, we have an issue at the state level, you know, with Acton and stuff. And as you know, I've been very forthcoming on this, saying that let's put it on the town warrant and we'll pull it if they haven't made a decision yet, so we don't get in trouble, because we can't really spend money like this if there's an issue outstanding, because they'll come back at us. But I still would like to see this go on the town meeting warrant, and if we get to town meeting and there's still no solution, that we have to pull it again. But I'm really very unhappy about all of this. You know, it's not fair. I'll say it's a simple word, but unfortunately in this world, sometimes fair doesn't matter.
If I may, that 142,000 wasn't to replace all the clapboard, it's just some of the rotted clapboard and then to paint the whole building. If they were to strip the entire building and replace it with vinyl siding, I'm gonna guess that number would probably be closer to double.
We can look into it and see.
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe that you could do that building for $142,000 in siding, vinyl or otherwise.
Yeah, it would be
Yeah,
miraculous.
Just the trim and everything would be, you know,
No, it's got substantial
substantial.
amount of size.
Exactly.
It's not easy.
Anyway,
I just did a house that's like $30,000.
yeah, houses are $30,000.
I think part of the reason also just is the cost that is that you're dealing with asbestos and lead paint. And
Right.
that's what the extreme cost is. So no matter what you do,
Yeah.
that is whether you're vinyl siding, whether you're doing whatever, that's gonna be a huge part of the whole.
Until you get it encapsulated, so what they're doing is they'll drape it and they'll negative air and take it out, whatever they replace, and then they'll encapsulate it with a paint, and that'll be the end of it.
So just, it's a huge cost.
Yeah.
Have to take it down.
No, they just can encapsulate it as long as it's encapsulated.
Okay.
It's exterior.
Well, I'll make the motion for CPC-6 that we include in the warrant for Springtown meeting.
Okay, motion to include on the warrant by Clerk Slavin, seconded by Selectman Scasiotti. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain. It's on the warrant unanimously. It would help, given this, the sum that you're seeking here and the amount. I think it would help your case at town meeting if you got a little bit more into the details of
Yeah,
what
well,
exactly was going to be
They have raised some
replaced.
money too, so,
Yeah,
on their
okay.
own, that we just don't have the numbers right now. so.
Yep, but it would be good for town meeting to have those things.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I have it.
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Okay, next up. Is the harbor master
Is he awake?
awake?
Oh, he's not sleeping.
Come on down.
Is he awake?
It's a long day.
Is that what you say every time you wake up? Yes. Okay, good. good. Glad we clarified that.
About that one.
Okay, Article CPC 7, restoration of onset pier, to see if the town will vote to appropriate from the Community Preservation Undesignated Fund or any other monies available in the Community Preservation Fund under the category of recreation, a grant to the town of Wareham up to the sum of $250,000 for the restoration of the onset pier or to do or act in any manner relative thereto. So, the floor is yours to tell us what this quarter mill is all about.
This was joint effort, both of us. So, over the past few years, since 2014, we had a condition survey done of the onset pier, which came back with some disturbing siding issues with the metal sheathing, bulkhead, things of that nature. We're at the lifespan of the steel, and the fasteners are starting to give away. Basically, what we're trying to do is get this into a shovel-ready project and get a engineering done, get a planning study in place to see what future uses for the pier. No.
Studies are,
Sorry. Anyway, so we're
Bad word.
trying to establish basically the engineering costs to start opening us up for some grants to tackle this pier. Can't just leave it. It's a multi-use area. It's one of our biggest attractions in town. It's massive recreational area for bathing, fishing. We've got a charter boat that runs between 35 to 50,000 people a year. It's a focal point.
Well, you know that the key to this, we should have started this like 10 years ago because it's really been and it's really getting to that point. And the interesting thing is that, you know, one of the things being in construction, the key to construction is to remember that it's never any cheaper than it is right now.
yeah.
And you have to remember that every day goes by, every week, every month, every year, it just costs more money. And so if you can't afford it now, think how much you can't afford it 5 years from now.
Well, and like you're saying, we've kicked it down the road 4 years now.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
At that point, we were brushing $4 million.
Right.
It depends on, what we want this pier to be. I mean, we really have to look at 50 years down the road on what we want this to look like, what we want it to do for the community. I mean, we don't, like I said, we don't just look at it as parking. We need to look at it as, how can we better this location?
The other thing you don't realize is the economy's starting to heat up, which means there'll be less available contractors to do the job. Typically, that raises costs as well, so we have to sort of get on this as quick as
I think with these
possible.
plans in place, this is gonna put us in a good position for alternate funding for stage. We desperately need.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
there's no way, looking at, there's no way the town can pay for this on its own.
Obviously.
And you need to have something in place, which are these drawings and concepts, and be able to sell this as a grant process.
There's
So
a
that's what's-
program we're in now too, right, that they put us in that might be able to pay for some of that, some grant money, right? That, when what's her name was down here, the lieutenant governor, remember she got us into that program?
Yeah.
And that's just what it's for, along the waterways and
This is
stuff.
the Governor's Seaport Council.
Yeah, the Seaport Council.
Yep.
We were talking Mass Works, we're also looking at,
Yeah, because,
there's other things through sea level rise and whatnot that, we can factor all of this into.
yeah, so, I mean, that-
and it's heating up with the Buzzards Bay project right by the bathhouse. On the 13th, we're going to meet with the Lieutenant Governor and the Seaport Council. It's made it to that level to be pitched to the Seaport Council for, I think it's about $350,000, which means, there's no guarantee, but looks like that could go forward. And
That's
once,
awesome.
once those things start happening, it tends to have a rolling effect.
ADA compatibility is huge too. I mean, our building, I've got pictures of the pier when it got its last renovation in 1987, and, at the time, the building was great, but, the doors aren't proper, we don't have access down to the docks, everything was built with steps, we need,
Ramps.
smooth egress for everybody to get down, and, we need to factor all this in. I'd love to see this.
Rather than steps, you're gonna use ramps?
It would all be, it'd be ramps, they were all gauged to certain pitches. Obviously going down to the floating docks, we have to look at, that's a whole, different scenario, because we have to look at, different grades with, factoring in tidal rise is in different pitches, so we have to probably put like pedestals, which the gangways would sit on, and then you turn and you can go down. So factor in all of that. We've been working with a engineering firm for some time.
Okay.
How are we doing with the state itself? Because remember when we did this rebuild back in the 80s, I think I brought up probably 7 years ago, there was that little clause in there that we were supposed to be responsible for repairs and maintenance after the grant went through. So we've never really put money aside for any of this. Have they got a sense of humor about it?
Well, the good news I would say is anybody that was involved in the 80s is most likely retired, so we're going forward
Yeah, but
without mentioning that.
We inherit our predecessors.
No, I mean from the state.
I know.
The biggest thing that we have to address with our infrastructures like this is we have to have a maintenance plan.
Yeah.
This isn't just, we get it and we watch it deteriorate. We've got to, we've got to put anodes on the steel. We've got to do certain things to preserve this.
We've got a few sinkholes already.
Preventative, which does cost money, but preventative will push us out another 15 years if we get done.
Well, I think it's critical we do an engineering survey, not a study, but survey of the facility. So when if the federal government decides really to do infrastructure grants, et cetera, which they're threatening to do, we're ready, because you're only gonna get one shot when it comes around.
Well, I mean, that's what sold us for the boat ramp. I mean,
I know.
when we had everything done and we didn't expect the funding to come from the Bouchard, and we got selected because we had all our ducks in a row.
Yeah.
We got it done, so it's nice to get it off the table. So
All right.
Motion, please?
Motion for the Springtown meeting for Article CPC-7 to approve.
Second.
Put on.
Okay, motion approved by Clerk Slavin, seconded by Selectman Scasiotti. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 400. Thank you for all your work on this. Good night.
Karen.
No,
I think that-
before we leave, I just want to let you know that the Wesleyan project had in their application given us the detail of the 142,000, and I'll be happy to summarize that and send it to the selectmen so you know exactly what they sent for the hazardous item removal project, for the clapboard installation, et cetera. They did break that down in their application.
Okay, yeah, that would be helpful information
So I
to
can
get out
send
there.
that to the selectmen, so you can see how they came up with the 142,000. Before we leave, we are working with a Community Preservation Act grant agreement. Mr. Bowen had used it on a previous project and made a strong recommendation that we adopt it and have it approved by the town administrator and the applicant going forward, that there are certain things that we're going to ask for the applicant. Report every 3 to 6 months on where they are with the project, to complete the project within a defined period of time, so we don't wait 9 years before something. And so we are waiting for the approval of the TA to use this document to send out to our applicants. So I just thought I can...
That's the one we got from council. I'll send it to council to review.
Well, he's the one that gave it to us. So we are waiting for the TA's review and approval of this before we sent it out to the applicants.
Yeah. So,
Do you want to see a copy of it again? No, okay.
do you need the email with a thumbs up or?
Yes, please, may I have a very smiling emoji? Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there anything else on this?
Nope, we're good.
Thank you very much.
for putting
Thank
that
you.
together.
Oh, by the way, I didn't do it on purpose, but I wrote up to the sum of in both articles for the two motions for the two town projects. I didn't do it on purpose. Both of them in the motion says up to. I apologize, not on
I was
purpose.
noticing I didn't put that in the applications.
Just the two town projects.
Yeah, there was something that was bothering about the church when we were talking about price. I looked at the 147, and I was thinking when you started talking about the mitigation, how cheap that was, then I realized no prevailing wage on it, so, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That right there.
Okay, that takes care of the CPC articles. We do have a couple of other articles that came in from town entities. One was from the Cemetery Commission. I would ask that we hold this off for the special town meeting warrant. Remember, they ran into
A buzzsaw.
some issues. Yeah, they ran into a buzzsaw the last time at the fall town meeting, so I'd kind of like for us, and you as liaison, to have some time to...
He's the liaison.
You're the liaison on that one?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
okay.
have the school department.
All right. Okay. Live people, dead people. Okay, got it.
I have the school committee.
So, yeah, let's hold off on this one. It's not that we're get a consensus of the board, if that's okay.
Well,
So I
yeah.
think it would be in their interest to try to, go through this with...
Yeah,
with us.
absolutely, make sure.
Try to see if
because
those are the objections from the
Nobody wants
last
to see
time.
them get hurt again, I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
So we're gonna move this over, recommend to move this to special, correct?
Yes.
I think I'm gonna meet with them, in the next 4 or 5 days. I'll go through it with them. And this is the latest edition, which I just saw
Yeah.
today, so I haven't had a chance to really go through it.
That's fine.
So,
Well, this will give you an opportunity. The second article, we're similarly, I think, we might consider putting it on the special, within the annual, is the request from the sewer commissioners for a rather significant sum of money to replace, or to line the 21 and 18-inch sewer interceptors that run from Swiss Beach all the way to the Narrows. That's a very big-ticket item, and I think they really need to give us more if they want this
Talk
to
to 'em
pass at town meeting.
You know, he didn't mention it to me at all, and I think we should, I mean, I know that there was some issues with the pipe.
Yeah.
And, but we need to have some conversation.
Well, the other thing is, I did speak with the chairman of the sewer commission and explain my views to him, and he thought that was fine. The additional thing is if it gets moved to the special, should it get approved at town meeting, they can start right away on it, and I know there are concerns about that pipe failing.
Yeah,
So it would actually behoove everybody to come up with more info, so that if it does get passed at town meeting, they can get cracking right on it, instead of having to wait for the fiscal year to roll around. So,
yeah, because
do
it's
do
gotta
we
go
agree
out.
that that's also something to do?
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, because there's a lot involved here.
Okay.
I have a question for Derek. On this one here, do they still have that $6 or $7 million in that, account that they built up for future projects and stuff?
Yep.
Yeah, you're talking about basically it's considered a capital fund, but don't
Yes.
forget that when the project came through for the Oakdale Cremisa, that has created over $1 million deficit when the artificially low amount was
$1,000 per household.
was voted. I would not touch anything like that. That would be, if I were to do a $10 million project, I wouldn't, maybe do a little bit out of there. You need to borrow for that, especially with what's going on nowadays before the bond yields change.
Okay, so then you would probably request a
I'd like-
borrowing article?
Right, I'd like to, it'd be nice to send us the information. We can go with Mr. Foster, we can run it through bond council to see what we would get for the costs and such. Yes, it always costs a little bit more money, but that's actually, when you're talking about a project like that, that could be spread out over 20 years or
Yeah.
so. That's a massive project.
Yeah.
Can we
Okay.
use a Mass Works grant for infrastructure like that? It's not
It
worth
would
it.
be, well, really, we're not going to be tying in any more businesses, really. This isn't an expansion.
But it is an infrastructure program,
It's an infrastructure, but Mass Works is usually for shovel-ready expansion.
understand?
Yeah, so,
Okay,
but I think, I understand what you're saying, and if there's something along the line, we could potentially, there's no reason not to apply for it, and if this is eligible for SRF funding, it could be, the 0%
Yeah.
or real low-interest loans, so.
okay. Well, I would ask our sewer liaison, make contact with them. If you and the town administrator could just perhaps push this in a little bit more palatable and easy to digest direction.
Yep.
Thanks. We did receive some petition articles. I'll just read what they are. Proposed to discontinue a portion of Cedar Island Road from a paper road located on map 52 surrounding lots 19, 1012, 90, 91, and 1013. We received a petition to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate for salary and benefits up to $80,000 to fund the full-time position of the Director of Council on Aging or at any other action relative thereto. I'm glad Selectman Whiteside isn't here for that one. Another one, commercial aquaculture regulation. Not going to read the whole thing, but it relates to notice going out and who gets notified for oyster farms or other commercial aquaculture grants or licenses or permits. You know, the harbor master probably has some thoughts on that. And the last is to see if the town of Wareham will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds the sum of $5,000 to South Shore Community Action Council, Inc. for services to low-income families and elderly residents in the town of Wareham, or take any other action relative thereto. I've spoken with Mr. Sullivan about this. This is actually fuel assistance, which we already have a program in place for that, so I don't know if this duplicates that or what.
The Old Colony Elder Services and what Pam Dudley does down in the office with our COA staff, so.
Yeah, so.
Just confused.
But those are 4 petition articles we received. I just wanted people to know that we'd gotten things in.
This one here, we don't, again, it's a citizen, so it goes in automatically.
Right, they all go on.
But it may be worthwhile for us ourselves to find out who this group really is and what they do, so we know whether it's duplicate services or not.
Yeah, we'll verify that.
Yeah.
Well, like any article from a petitioner, you got to sell it at town meeting, so that information would be useful to give the body. We also have a warrant article for, so that's on the special, so we can hold off on that. We do have an article from the Finance Committee, and that article
Changing the terms.
would be to change the terms, to amend the bylaws at Division 1, Article 4, which relates to the Finance Committee, to read, "There shall be a Finance Committee of 9 members who shall hold no other no other town office in or be a permanent member, a permanent employee of the town." I'm having a tough time with the pink font here that isn't. An appointing committee consisting of the moderator, chairman of the Board of Selectmen, and the chairman of the Finance Committee shall appoint 3 members annually for a term of 3 years. All members of the committee shall serve until their replacements are duly qualified, but no member shall serve for more than 9 years. In the event of any vacancy in its membership, the committee shall notify the moderator, and the moderator will arrange to have the vacancy filled. Vacancies shall be filled by the appointing committee within 60 days after they occur for the balance of the unexpired term. Presently, you can serve 2 consecutive 3-year terms, then you have to go off for a year, and then you can come back. This is the once you're done provision. Perhaps the chairman of the Finance Committee could come up and explain how his board voted on this and feels about it.
Evening, Rennie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was a feeling of the committee that after a certain period of time, 6 years, and come back after another year, where we were denying perhaps some fresh ideas, some fresh eyes on every aspect of the finance of the town that we have to review. It is felt also after 9 years that we're kind of growing old, and we need, again, another fresh pair of eyes. Also, if you go beyond the 9 years, let's say, you tend to become an integral part of the planning, which is inappropriate because we'd overstep our bounds and be interfering with the planning as done by the responsible individuals.
Okay, questions from the board?
Yeah, no, I'll have to think about that for a while.
We've had some people, when we've gone up to the Mass Municipal Association, the presenters, they've been on their boards for over 22 years. And they have an office in the town hall, and I think that's overstepping the intent of reviewing the applications that we're responsible for. And we felt, as I've mentioned before, we get a little old after 9 years, and we need some fresh eyes on it. First 3, we're learning. The second 3, we're pretty much performing. And then the last 3, we're training someone new and kind of bringing it up. And after 9 years, I have been on other committees, and that's typical of the term that they've served on them.
We've not really had an issue with that, because we've had pretty good turn through our Finance Committee over the years. Nobody's been there that long. 6 years, they were gone, and they didn't even come back, most of them.
Was Dom there for 6 years?
Dom was for 6 and he's back again.
We had a few.
Yeah.
A few, but it's
We've
not,
had a few, but they aren't
it's
few.
not constant,
It's not been constant at all.
but it's not a bad idea.
Yeah, but that's not to suggest anyone can't serve 6 years, come off the committee, and then serve the balance of 3 years. They can come back.
See, the problem is where do you draw the line, too? What if you had somebody who was on the committee 20 years ago, Now he's retired and he wants to go back on the committee. Now he can't come back on because he's already served time.
No, if he hasn't served 9 years.
Yeah, but that's, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it is instituting a cap, which the other didn't. It just instituted a period, but,
I
for
don't
which you
know.
could
I don't
serve, and
know
then,
that that's,
We're talking about a term limit.
yeah, it is a term limit.
It's a term limit.
it's a term limit. It's a term limit to a finance committee, which is not the same as an elected official.
I know in the town of
No.
Arlington, which is probably one you're referring to, that particular finance committee does have an office at Town Hall, has secretaries, everything else, and I believe they've gone 24 years in a row presenting to their town meeting their budget, and it's all explained in the booklet. I'm not exaggerating, it's about that thick they pass out. They've never had an article turned down and not passed in that town.
Indeed,
those
one
24
committee I
years.
served on, we had our own secretary, we had our own office,
Yeah.
but we had a term of 9 years.
Yeah.
And there were 16 members on that committee.
Well,
Yeah.
anything else?
Yeah, no.
I'll make a motion that we put it on to the town meeting warrant, and then let
Second?
the
Absolutely.
citizens make their decision.
Okay, motion
People make their
by
mind
Clerk Slavin, seconded by Selectman Tropiano. All in favor, say aye.
Yep.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 400. What's going on?
Thank you.
I think, no, we got solar pilots. That's the special. I already said that, right? No, that was something else that goes to the special.
Yeah, we have the marijuana, too.
We have the marijuana. This will be for the March 12th special. I'll read this one out. It's a little bit lengthy.
Mr. Chairman, just, I happen to note that the title was omitted, so I hand-wrote it in on this copy. I thought it was important to add that title.
Okay, yep. There's actually 2 articles here, so it's going to require 2 votes. The first one relates to authorizing the town to impose a tax of 3% on retail sales of marijuana. That would go in the general bylaw. That would not go in the zoning bylaw. So I'll read the article. To see if town meeting will vote to accept state law at Mass General Laws, Chapter 64N, Section 3A, as amended by Chapter 55, Section 13 of the Acts of 2017, authorizing imposition of a tax of 3% on sales by a marijuana retailer.
Question on that. Rich, isn't that supposed to be an excise tax? Is what they call it. This is going to be submitted by the Board of Selectmen, not by planning or anybody else.
Right.
I think it's an excise tax is what they call it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just say that, and through you to Selectman Slavin, see, to accept State Law, Chapter 64N, Section 3A, all we're really doing is just accepting the law, the characterization of the tax. Well, it is a tax. I think I'd probably leave it as it is.
Okay, I'm just going to read it. Industry taxation. State lawmakers institute a straightforward tax regime for the cannabis industry that consists of a 6.25 state sales tax, a 10.75 state excise tax, and an optional local excise tax that we're doing that is capped at 3%.
I don't think we have to say excise. If we're pulling it out, unless you want to pull that section of the law up, if we're pulling it out of the law, if we're reciting the law or just adopting the law, we can call it a can of tuna fish, and the law is what matters.
Right.
I know, I'm just, if we know what it is, maybe it's just easy to make it the correct term. If the council doesn't think it's necessary, it's fine. I just know that it's been called an excise tax from day one.
64N.
Sorry, Rich.
No, no.
Section 3A.
Section 3, small a.
You know you're in Massachusetts when you're on 64N, section, and then
Yeah.
subsections within category N,
Yeah.
something, you know that there's a lot of
No, you're in
taxes
a
in
lot
this
of
state.
trouble.
You know, it just happened that I had the general laws up on my screen, so
It's fortuitous. Now you just got to get this one.
And if, anytime you want to complicate anything, give it to the state of Massachusetts. They try to reinvent the wheel with everything.
on it yet, right?
This was,
No, they
this is a tough one.
I know.
Yeah.
They just
Yeah.
keep playing with it.
I'll just talk about the whole process here a little bit more. What's been interesting here through this whole process of legalization, that's a little bit different than the regulation of other industries, is the other industries in the world all existed first, and then they got regulated by the government for the most part, except for maybe the Atomic Energy Commission. I can't really think of anything else that was new out of the gate. In this case, this is a fairly new industry. Other states have done it before us, but not decades before us. So even the states that did it first, like Colorado and Washington and so on and so forth, they've run into some issues, and they've had to adjust theirs some, but the book is not yet written on how their laws are performing fully. So it's a case of a new industry that is trying to be, we and the other states that have legalized marijuana are trying to regulate before it even gets off the ground. So it's led to some interesting fits and starts to the process.
This is out of the pages-long legislation that created this whole
Thing.
All 100-plus pages.
bonanza,
Yeah.
It's, or
Yeah, okay.
new supply of rolling paper, depending on how you look at it, I guess. It says at Section 13, said Chapter 64N is hereby further amended by striking out Section 3 as so appearing and inserting in place thereof the following section, Section 3A. A city or town that accepts this section in the manner provided in Section 4 of Chapter 4 may impose a local sales tax upon sale or transfer of marijuana or marijuana products by a marijuana retailer operating within the city or town to anyone other than a marijuana establishment at a rate not greater than 3% of the total sales price received by the marijuana retailer as consideration for the sale of marijuana or marijuana products. So,
No excise, it's just a sales tax.
yeah,
So we have basically two documents having two different words, it's fine.
I'll go with the general laws. What do you got, something from the Cannabis Control Commission?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll go with the legislature. They're doing a better job with this than anybody else is.
We should just go with whatever we know is safe, and it's not going to be a problem.
Tax covers all.
Thank
Just
you.
what
That's
I was going to say.
very inclusive of what we want to do here.
Okay, just make sure we're.
Yep. Well, now that we've figured out that arcane detail, can we have a motion, please?
Motion so made.
Okay, second? Okay, and this again is just on the taxation, and it would go in the town bylaws, not in the zoning.
And this is brought forth by the selectmen.
This is brought forth by the selectmen. Somebody can probably address it at the hearing next week, but it's not part of the actual consideration by the planning board.
No,
So,
already made the motion.
second by Selectman Scasiotti. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, abstained, 400. And now I will have to look at Attorney Bowen's title for the next one. This will be regulation of marijuana establishments, et cetera. To see if town meeting will vote to amend the Wareham zoning bylaws in three parts as, A, add to Article 16 definitions before medical marijuana treatment center, quote, marijuana establishment, a marijuana cultivator, marijuana testing facility, marijuana product manufacturer, marijuana retailer, or other type of licensed marijuana-related business as defined by state regulations, 935 Code of Mass Regulations 500 et sequitur, including any subsequent updates, unquote. B, rescind zoning bylaws, Article 3, Section 391, medical marijuana treatment centers, and Section 392, marijuana facilities, and replace with the following. 391, medical marijuana treatment center, also known as a registered marijuana dispensary, as defined, and to the extent that such facilities are permitted under state laws and regulations, shall be allowed in the institutional zoning district. 392, other marijuana establishments, to the extent that such facilities are permitted under state laws and regulations, shall be allowed by special permit in the institutional and industrial zoning districts and in the strip commercial district east of Glen Charlie Road, Depot Street, and Great Neck Road. 393, the number of marijuana retailers shall be limited to a total of 3 separate establishments within the town of Wareham. 394, a minimum separation of 1,500 feet is required between marijuana retailers, but not including marijuana treatment centers. 395, all marijuana establishments shall be in conformance with state regulations and licensing requirements for such establishments regarding buffers, access, and security. 396, all marijuana establishments shall be in conformance with the dimensional intensity and setback requirements of the underlying zoning. 397, signage for all marijuana establishments shall be in conformance with state regulations and licensing requirements of such establishments, and in conformance with Wareham zoning bylaws, Article 11, signs. 398, use variances are not allowed for any marijuana establishment or medical marijuana treatment center. C, to amend the zoning bylaws, Article 3, Section 320, Table of Principal Use Regulations, to insert marijuana establishments as special permit use within the strip commercial, institution, and industrial districts, and prohibited within all other districts, inserted as follows, and it just shows the chart going across. So, is that a motion?
Just before, Rich, do we have to have any statement about removing the moratorium?
That's going to be a separate bylaw.
I believe that is, oh gosh, I just handed a copy of it away.
I didn't see it in this one here, that's why I asked.
Yeah. If you look under the draft, and I don't know which draft you're looking at.
Yeah, it's rescind zoning bylaws.
Yeah, it's under A,
Under B, actually.
or B, yes, I'm sorry.
That's right, it's part of
Rescind
that.
zoning bylaws, Article 3, Section 391, that's the moratorium.
Is the moratorium considered
Yeah, and then this
zoning
language,
bylaw?
I'm sorry,
Is the zoning, is the moratorium actually a zoning
Yes.
bylaw?
Yes.
yes.
You might want to just put in parentheses moratorium so they really understand what it is, or not necessary again.
Well,
I don't think the average person is going to know if the moratorium is a zoning bylaw.
they will now.
We could go with that in the finance committee booklet that goes out.
Yeah,
might
that can be the explanation.
Yep,
Got a
up
job
to
for
you.
you.
I won't charge extra.
That's okay, we aren't paying.
Am I allowed to volunteer you to do something?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so we got that covered?
That'll be good. Yeah. Now, on this, so everybody understands, this is just something that we've put together as a base for the planning board. They have to have their hearing and vote on it, correct?
Yeah, they vote a recommendation
Yes,
on it.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, they have their hearing coming up on
The 12th.
12th? Yes.
Yeah, this is coming Monday.
So this, of course, is subject to change, and the motion presented at town meeting could depart somewhat within Madam Moderator's determination of appropriate scope. So, yeah, what happens on the 12th is very important.
The planning board is part of the legislative branch, so they're the ones that are bringing this piece up forward,
Oh, absolutely.
not us.
No planning board report, no action, so.
Okay.
And with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'd just add that the Cannabis Control Commission, which is the state body charged with overseeing this project, is still drafting its regulations and won't have the regulations ready for at least another 5 weeks.
March 15th.
So, as things roll along, it may be necessary through motions to make changes.
Yep.
And I'll just add another point, which is that the Cannabis Control Commission's understanding of conventional zoning principles, well established by hundreds of years of judicial precedent, so far seems somewhat lacking. The traditional rule is unless something specifically allowed, it's prohibited. So far, that has not been reflected in the Cannabis Control Commission's reports out to us about what they're thinking.
I think we're going to end up seeing some lawsuits from cities and towns, et cetera. A lot of, unfortunately, it's not a few, but quite a few cities and towns do not believe they have to have anything in place until just before the moratorium is up, which is the end of December. And I don't think that's the case, at least not from what I got today and the last week.
I think part of the problem is the legislation that was actually passed.
Oh, yeah, it was
Because
written.
in the legislation, you basically can't get in the way of it. I mean, if you read the original passage,
It was written by the industry.
yeah, exactly. So if you read what was actually passed and what's in place, even though they've allowed these moratoriums and allow the Cannabis Commission to make, is going to allow changes which the legislature is going to enact, that's, I think the problem is that in the regulation, it says that you can't put regulation in place to control it. You know what I mean? So they have to sort of change that as well. That's why they have so much problem going on.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, you know, in holding the special town meeting to consider whether the town should regulate this through zoning. The town is taking the conservative approach by having it in March rather than waiting an extra 5 or 6 weeks
Right.
until the annual or the special within the annual. And the reason for that is because there is a conflict of advice that's coming from the state level. You certainly could have sat back and gone with one school of thought, which would have been to do nothing, with the possibility of having unforeseen results. Because of the Cannabis Control Commission's unwillingness to come up with regulations far enough in advance, we're left in the situation where we have two different agencies, the Cannabis Control Commission on one hand, and the Attorney General on the other, putting forward two different positions as to your ability to regulate.
Also, the Department of Health, Rich.
Well, okay,
is in
well,
there
now we've
too.
got three players.
The Department of Health doesn't exit out until December 31st, 2018.
So, by holding the town meeting when you're having it, you are adopting the most conservative approach to this. By conservative, I mean conservative from the point of view of letting people have their say as to how they want to do this or whether they want to do this, rather than having a result that just results from doing nothing. That does not reflect the people's will. However this gets voted, that's how it gets voted.
Yeah. And again, April 1st is the magic day. That's the day that we understand people will be able to apply for these things. And if you don't have a cap in place, you could get inundated. So that's the reason for all of this, really.
And the locations, too.
Now, the other piece, too, is, if this gets adopted and certain aspects of it don't really work out well for consumers or for the town in the long term, you can always go back and change at a subsequent town meeting. No law is permanent. It can always be changed.
Make a motion to go ahead and put that forth for the planning board for the hearing on the 12th.
Well, actually, we've got to put it on the special warrant
We
tonight.
can put it on the special warrant as well, but
Yep.
it goes both ways.
Okay, motion to put on the warrant and forward to planning board by Clerk Slavin, seconded by Selectman Scasiotti. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 400. So we do have copies up here for the media as well.
We do, and I do want to thank you not only for the timing of this, but actually just probably the level of interest we're going to see on this and how confusing it can be. I could not imagine doing this during an annual town meeting when you're trying to pass the budget, so thank you for taking the time and thinking this through. So.
Kind of had a gun to our head.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I like writing laws. I don't like trying to follow conflicting laws from other people. Let's see. I don't know what I did with my agenda. What do we got next?
Next item will be continued discussion on the member assignments.
Right. There is one important vacancy, and that's on the school building committee.
Yeah.
You've already got the school committee as a liaison yourself, so I'd like for Alan to step up and do that. He will find out exactly what's going on with the school buildings.
I thought I was on that committee.
No,
You would ask for school
Judy.
committee.
you're on the school committee.
Yeah, they,
So-
But this is the school building committee. That's that 23-member.
yeah, I think that's what they thought that it was. Hold on a second,
No,
because,
it's the school committee separate.
hold on a minute.
That's the Wednesday meetings.
Hang on. I'll look this up. School Building Committee. They sent me a thing. Happy to see you're volunteered to be liaison for the school committee. There's so much important information being discussed at the building committee meeting. The next meeting is February 13th.
They misheard that.
I'm just saying, I scheduled to go there, so I thought that's the committee that I was going on.
Well, you can still go. I'm sure the meetings were a lot of fun to observe.
No.
23, maybe they'll expand it to 24. We just won't call you a subcommittee.
What do you want to do?
Well, I mean, it's up to you. I mean, I don't see why we should split it up anyway.
We're not going to split it up. It's either you or I. Sure. What
I
do you wanna
mean,
do?
I got the schools, I don't know why I wouldn't just take it. It's all part of the same process.
I think the only reason would be the direction I'm coming is a lot different than everybody else.
The direction you're coming from?
Yeah.
Well, that's probably true. I wouldn't doubt that one.
'Cause I'm asking about, capacities and whether we can repair rather than replace, et cetera, which they haven't even considered.
Well, I know they've talked about that stuff, but,
Yeah.
it's what they're getting approved for that makes the difference, I mean,
Yeah, but they have a choice of 3 things they can go for.
so.
I'm not gonna force one way or the other. It's really, I'm not doing the school committee because I can't with the finance committee.
Well, if you want to go, go. That's
Let me
fine.
just go for 1 or 2, see what it's like.
Yeah, see
And if
what's
it's not
going
gonna
on.
work and it's been a few, then we'll switch it off.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah, why don't you both go to that one? Figure it out.
Is that fair?
Flip a
Yeah, you want
coin
to
or
know, I
something.
told you what the date is, right?
So we can both go.
I just gave it to you. It's February the 13th at 5:30 and 2:28.
It's Wednesday.
It's a Tuesday, actually. It's before this meeting.
Oh, that's right.
13th, yeah, because the 12th
Tuesday
is
at
a Monday.
5:30
Yeah, it's basically senior moment.
and 2:28.
Okay, you fellows figure it
Look at
out.
Both of us for at least a day. Take advantage.
There you go. What else?
Yeah. No sense straining
Buried
yourself
mine in
there.
all these articles.
Guess who's next?
Let's see.
It's a show and tell time.
Any other, town business, any 48-hour business, anybody?
No.
You? Do you have any 48-hour business?
No.
No? Okay, fun time, budget.
Goodness gracious. Actually getting this on the screen and everything, huh?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you. You've been given a copy of the budget, the usual outline, but tonight I'm also looking at just putting a PowerPoint together because oftentimes people at home obviously can't see what you're reading. So this will be more some of the highlights, if you will. The FY19 budget, and this is...
Microphone.
There is one around.
You gotta get pretty close
You
enough
gotta
to
get
hear.
closer to it.
What about the one behind you?
Let's try that.
Try that.
Interference, you good?
There you go.
We're good, Rich.
Put one each ear.
Put 2 more over there.
It's a great thing. So when you start off with, you always start off with your previous year's tax levy. And this is 2.5% is probably one of the most misunderstood, misquoted things when it comes to taxation. So what you do is you take your prior year tax levy, which was, the previous year's tax levy with 2.5 increase plus new growth.
Right.
So now you have your new one, all right? So you start with FY18 tax levy. That can be increased by 2.5%. So that's where Proposition 2.5 comes in when you really look at it. That's one of the main aspects, but that's just so people understand. Doesn't mean your tax bill can only go up 2.5%. That 900 and almost, 974,000 is spread across all assessments. So if your value's gone up, your tax bill could go up more versus somebody that potentially has gone down due to the market values. New growth, we're estimating $400,000 in new growth. That's right along where we've been coming in. We were 396 for this fiscal year, previously about 350 or so. We haven't been experiencing anything higher than that. During the heyday growth of the town, you were seeing new growth of 700, 800, 900,000 at a time. We're just not going to experience that sort of growth again. Then we have other revenue, which is state aid. So the first part of state aid, that's the Chapter 70 revenue, which is school, which is for the school, and the charter school reimbursement. We have a large increase in the charter school reimbursement, unfortunately, because we have a large increase in the charter assessments. State aid, general government, we're at 2.5 million. Estimated local receipts, that's your That's your meals tax, your motor vehicle excise, fees, and that's where you come in. This is the highest that we've ever budgeted for local receipts. They've been trending very well. Available funds, that's when you're taking from, say, waterways, and you transfer out of accounts that can only be established for those. And then the enterprise fund, direct costs and indirect costs, that's everything that the town pays and does on behalf of the sewer department. We pay for all the health care, all the insurances, the liability. The town staff works on behalf of them, the collections. So that's what establishes it. So when you look at it, our tax levy is now reached, our total tax levy is now reached a little over 40 million. You've got your other revenues, including the state aid, at 23.8 million. So our total estimated revenues are $64,235,931. And this is where we start off with. You always start off with the revenue estimate before you even get into the expenses. So in this, you could actually even do, instead of percentages, you could almost do this as pennies, if you would. If you look at, this is where our money goes, actually. When you look at school budget, that's the general school budget that we give, the net and non-net school budget, that's 44%. Upper Cape Cod Tech, that's the tuition assessment. There's another 5%. And if you move up over here, these are the tuition assessments, which are the charter school and the school choice sending. They're about 5%. They've gone over what we pay to Upper Cape Cod Tech now. So if you look at it, between our regular school budget and these other school costs, where that's approximately 54% of the entire budget. Our general government budget, that's police, municipal maintenance, administration, collection, Board of Health, all the town departments are 19%, less than 20% of the entire town's budget. You have the state assessments continued. Teachers' health insurance, the retired teachers' health insurance comes out as a state assessment because it's through the GIC. So that's not under the employee benefits number, that's a separate state assessment. So that's roughly 2% of our budget. It's our $64 million budget. Then all the other state assessments are 1%. Overlay is what you set aside from your taxation in case for abatements and such. We do $350,000, and then SERPED's our annual SERPED assessment, which is around $3,800, I believe. A workers' comp and our general liability about 2%. Although they've gone, which means that they are over $1 million now. That has been going up drastically. Veterans benefits is about 1%. We are in a consortium with Cape Cod for a veterans agent, and we pay them assessment of a little over $23,000 a year. But then there's an additional almost, you'd say, 260 some odd $1,000 that we pay in veterans benefits to veterans which live in this community that are due the benefits. You get reimbursed approximately 75% of that amount, which goes back up into state aid. So this is just if you were looking as a whole. So what I was saying before, if you looked at it and said, well, 44%, really when you think about it, 44 cents out of every dollar is the regular school, another 5 cents is Upper Cape Cod Tech, the state assessment tuition, another 5%, 19 cents out of every dollar is going to your general government. Does that make sense? And this is more of a breakdown for it. So you'll see, and I have it later, but this is the state assessment for the tuition assessments. We've now gone over $3 million. When I started working, I think I took over, was working on the 2012 budget, our entire state assessments were $2,045,000. That was all state assessments. And I think our tuition assessments, and we'll show it later, were approximately $360 some odd thousand. That is a massive jump. The teachers retired and health insurance, that's ranged from 1.2 to 1.4. This is actually a little over $60,000 reduction. you know, it's actually unfortunate when there's reductions, because there's a reason for that. But these are the other state assessments. So GATRA's a little over, it's over 200,000. There's the overlay. So when you look at them, we call the recap items, you're at about 5.1 million. This is our health insurance. We're part of the Mayflower Municipal Health Insurance Group, and we put our Delta. We do Altus Delta Dental. Mayflower Municipal Health Insurance, they'll be voting on the rates to bring to, the steering committee will tomorrow to bring the rates to the general board in approximately a month's time. It's looking at about a little over 7% increase for what they call the legacy plans, which are the high value plans. And then the other reduced plans are in the 5% range. The good and the bad is, if we had stayed with the same number of subscribers and people hadn't been changing to the lower plans, this would have been approximately about $250,000 higher. But we budgeted last year for 603 subscribers, and we're now down to 592. And believe it or not, 11 people on a family plan can be an over $20,000 difference per subscriber. Plymouth County Retirement, LiUNA Retirement, that's our annual assessment, over $4 million. Property liability workers' comp insurance, as I said, 1.2, and running down the list. So people often ask, you know, where does the money go? Again, before you can even get to the school or the town's budget, you know, you've spent 5.1 million just going back to the state, over 15 million just on essentially, if you will, benefits and fixed costs that you can't change. You know, we've changed some of the rates. The town is 67.5, 32.5 split. It used to be 75-25, but we worked with the unions. But we look at, there's over $20 million, and you know, the Upper Cape Cod Tech is another 23. So before you even can get to us, you know, money's just flying out the window, if you will. So if you look at it, this is obviously not what the school requested, and I'll get into how we came up with the calculation later. And then this is not what was, the 12 million was not what the department heads had requested. That was greatly reduced. And these got a little crisscross, but this is the revenue pie when you look at it. So where do we get our dollar from? 61% is from the actual tax levy. And it's interesting because when you look at it, state aid, we have one of the highest state aids around. 25% of all our revenue is aid from the state. When you look at the, you know, you've got the levy limit at 61%. When you put in new growth and the 2.5%, you're at 64%. Someplace like, I was just going through other ones, someone like sandwiches, 77% of all their revenues come from their real estate, the real estate taxes. So Wareham is on the lower side of where they're getting their taxes. So estimated local receipts, again, 10%. They've been doing very well, and available funds are a minuscule amount. So this is when coming through, this is the historical chart for the state aid. And this is what we were talking about before with some of the bets for it. So you look at chapter 70, that has gone up well. You know, you look at it, we're at 12.2 million going up to 13. So that's increased. The charter tuition, you can see it's sort of spiking this year. School lunch, school choice receiving tuition, that's for kids coming into the community, and then the unrestricted general government aid. This, you can see really, just because of the size of it, that's really going up maybe 1% to 3% annually. This year it's 3.5%. So our general government, our aid has gone up with the estimated receipts from about 14.5 to 16.5. So it's gone up about 2 million during that time. But here's the big thing. this is what's really gone. This is what, everybody needs to take a look at, is right here. This is what has gone up dramatically. In 2012, we spent just under 170,000 school choice sending and almost 198,000 in charter sending, so about a little over 367,000. This is where we're at today, over $3 million. Just this year alone, we're looking at an increase of $764,000. So when I get through the budget, and there's probably, because I'm not following that sheet, we had roughly $2 million in new revenue to begin with. 703,000 of it's going right back to the state, is being wiped off the mat. You have another, almost 800,000 going to the benefits and the fixed costs. We're going to have, unfortunately, we budget 204,000, but it's going to be closer to 291,000 going to Upper Cape Cod Tech. So before we even get to the town's budget or the school's budget, we're going to be spending almost a little over $1 million, actually almost $1.1 million on education, sending kids to other locations. That's over half of our new revenue going out to other areas. So as you follow the trend, this is our net state aid. And net state aid was our revenue less the assessments. Used to be 12.4 million. Today we're at 11.7. So we're $700,000 less than we were in 2012 for our net state aid. And we had a dramatic rise for net state in 2018 because the governor for the first time helped bring up where you were actually being reimbursed for the health insurance costs to the school through the Chapter 70 formula, which is a large increase. So this year, our net state increase for our net state aid increase for this year is negative 231,000. So, and this was the spike that I talked about. But when you follow it again, if you were to put the trend line, you're going down. And at some point, at some point you would think that you'd regress to the mean of where we would be for students, but it's not just Wareham.
It's everywhere.
And again, and I'm sorry, because I'm using Sandwich because I'm using it as a community comparison that I was looking at. Their tuition sending cost is over $3 million as well. And that used to be, for the Cape, that was, non-charter school system people wanted to be in. And they're sending their kids elsewhere. Kids are going everywhere. So this is a tough one to see, but this is the most important one right now. And this is how we got to where we were for the budgets. So when you look at it, you have two columns. The first part is the revenue, and I'm calling that the shared. This is the revenue that's neither designated for the town or the schools. It's the shared revenue. That's our property tax. Believe it or not, other state aid, which is the unrestricted general government aid, goes in the pile, local receipts, and the indirect costs. You'll see this is the town change in revenue. This fiscal year, we budgeted $90,000 for the Carver-Marion Wareham Refuse District through free cash. That's not available. We're not doing that again. So that's actually a reduction in revenue. It's tough. I would prefer to try and claim it's not that way, but we need to, if we're keep towing the line on how these should be allocated, that would be a reduction to the town. Now you look at the new revenues dedicated for just the school. So that's $329,000, almost $500. Chapter 70 money should go to the school. The charter reimbursement, it is the way this is set up, that is to the schools. So now, interestingly enough, the Chapter 70, the $50,000, when you hear that they're holding the state's budget, which is House 2 right now from the governor, holds up that they will pay the minimum amount, at least the minimum, for new aid per student. That's $20 per student. It's only $50,000. You know, it doesn't amount to much, and unfortunately, that's one of the problems with the Chapter 70 formula. So the next set underneath here, these are the fixed costs and the costs allocated to each one. So county retirement, LIUNA, the retirement, so people forget, they think there's just teachers in schools. The school department has other employees that are part of the county retirement system. We have workers' comp, the retired teachers' health. We haven't been holding the health when there's increases against the school department. So if there's a credit, they should, you know, it stays in this column as well. So all told, you're looking at, there's $643,951 in new costs. You go over here, there's nothing that's pure town. Now you go to the school. So you have the special education, which is an assessment from the state aid assessment, and the charter and tuition sending, $764,437. Upper Cape Cod Tech, which again, as of, I heard this morning, it's closer to 291,000. But you look at, there's 985,000. Those are educational costs. So what you do is you add up everything that's together, the 1.159,212, add it to the negative 90, add it to the negative 656,054, brings you out to 579,606. Yeah, this one is slightly off on there, but that's okay. This is just for the example when it comes down to it. It's because you need to, well, actually, you've got the two of them. 579, if this were the 50-50 split, 579,606 would go to the town, 579,606 would go to the school. But that would actually be, that would result in an unbalanced budget. So you take whatever the dedicated net revenue to the town is, reduce this amount by the amount up there, so 579,606 with the negative 90,000 added to it. That means the town would get $489,606. Go over to the school. They have negative 656,054. So you're going to add that to the 579,606. The school department's budget would actually, on a 50-50 split, be reduced by $776,000. So you'll see each example. This is the one that I've proposed, which is the 65-35 split. In that all new money that comes in, 65% of it's dedicated to the school, 35% of it's dedicated to the town. So that would mean if you went on a 65-35 split of the 1.159, you'd be looking at the town getting $405,724 and the school $753,488. Now again, you take the reductions from up here from the dedicated net revenue or expense. That means $315,724. Again, the dedicated net revenue from the school to $753, $97,434. So I think probably from my end, when you look at somebody here, you know, you've got over $2 million in new revenue. 643,000 gets eaten up by these fixed costs, if you will. 985,000 gets eaten up by the sending tuitions and Upper Cape Cod Tech. It leaves only about $400,000 to split between two budgets that represent, you know, approximately $40 million. I mean, the amount to split is negligible. So I often, you know, and this is one of the things that bothers me, is I'll hear, well, in a $60 million budget, you can just cut out a couple pencils and that will pay for our new director. What they don't understand is that's the new money on there. That's the money that's to split. It's not $60 million. It's a couple $100,000. This is probably one of the most interesting things. we're told, why can you not do what other communities can do? And then we bring up Wareham's average and everybody goes to the tax rate. Look, the best way to look at a community is the average single-family tax bill. Now, you've got the town of Wareham. It's $2,912. And people say, well, you didn't include the district. They're absolutely right. So to make an apples-to-apples comparison, I'm going to use the town of Wareham with the onset fire district tax. That at this level, you're looking at $3,624. So Bourne, you're about $800 difference. Carver, 16, and it goes the whole length. The closest we are, believe it or not, is to Falmouth, and it's still a $700 difference. What's $700? That's not a lot of money, right?
Times 9,000.
It isn't.
Well, we have 9,382 single-family parcels. So if you multiply, and let's take Falmouth the closest, $773 times 9,382 parcels, that leaves you with $7.2 million. I think there's a couple things we could do for $7.2 million. If you want to compare us to these other communities, here is if we were the same average single-family tax bill. This is what you'd be looking at. If we're the same as Bourne, $7.7 million. Carver, believe it or not, $14.7 million. Again, Falmouth, $7.2, Lakeville, $9.7, Mattapoisett, $25 million, $9.3 million to Middleborough, Plymouth, $18.6, Rochester, $14.4, Sandwich, $18.4. People will say, well, Carver has a lot less properties, so that's unfair. A lot less properties with higher values, a lot less people you need to serve. So you want to compare it to these other communities? If we had this, I think there's a lot more services you would be looking at. I think you'd be looking at a certified library. I think you'd be looking at a fully funded COA. I'm imagining the schools could be helped, and our police department, and we could probably have a pretty darn good municipal maintenance department. So that was the overview for everyone of the budget.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think what's really important is to see that when we tell people that our tax rate is low and we've been locked in with 2.5, and people come up with all these different reasons, they don't realize as small a figure as $700 times 9,000, true number is. So that at the end of the day, we're way behind everybody no matter what we do. I'm amazed that we've been able to not only stabilize, but show a little bit of growth, you know, with the situations. We were talking about having 2019 as a year, you know, this was 5 years ago, but 2019 was probably going to be the year which we were going to be in financial crisis.
Well,
Through the town administrator's constant work.
You know, I've been saying this for years and years, since the 90s. I've been telling everybody, the formula wasn't fair when it started, because Wareham's property values were so low, we get 2.5%, it's hardly nothing. But you take a town like Weston, right? They have, 7,000, 10,000 people, whatever, in the town compared to us. And their property values, they get $8 million houses on every corner. So they get millions of dollars at new money every single year. It doesn't work for smaller communities like us that had low property values to begin with. And we can never catch up. You can never catch up because it's 2.5, and it remained that way forever. So we were behind the 8 ball when we started.
You got that, plus you have the Chapter 70 formula.
Well, and
Which doesn't
that's
work for
even
us at
messes
all.
it up
Makes it
too.
worse.
But the point is that we were always behind the 8 ball. I can remember when I could buy in Shangri-La houses for, you could have gone up there and bought them for $35,000 without even thinking about it, right? And, they're over $100,000 now, and they've gone up in value, but that's a long time has gone by since that has happened. So if you think about, that's where we started, You know, when other communities had houses that were already in the $100,000 value, it didn't work. It just didn't work. It never did work. It was very unfair for communities like ours.
And I do want to point one thing out so that everybody, if you go back to when the override was proposed, the increase to the average single-family tax bill, I think, was $130. And just so people are not confused, the numbers I were using were just the average single-family tax bill.
Right.
So that's why you'd be looking at, 700, but that's why it was cheaper when you're actually doing it, because the commercial properties and others
Which you
are
weren't
picking
including
up.
in this.
Correct, are picking up a cost.
Right.
So,
Yeah, it's pretty sad.
Yep. It is what it is. We can't spend what we don't have, so it's,
We just can't make a mistake when we spend money.
well,
It's amazing how we've handled it to this far. I don't know how we have, to be honest with you. It's, and Derek, you deserve a lot of credit because, this was a lot worse not too long ago. And with some measures and things, you managed to get it as tight as you can. And you've done a damn good job. But ultimately, you're fighting a losing battle.
well, we're very lucky. We have dedicated staff that work beyond. And, the employees have worked with us to make plan design changes and such, so, we're lucky to have them and them working for us. So,
Yeah, they work with us rather than for us. It's a big difference.
Yeah, they're good people. We have great people.
well, that, folks, is
So
the first crack at the budget. It's probably not final just yet for town meeting because more information will be coming in
and I think there'll be,
as it goes forward.
there'll be other meetings in the school, giving them the information and such, so it's tough for them. I don't envy them at any stretch either, so.
Their job going forward is student retention, and that's certainly beyond what any of us can do or address. Is there anything else you'd like to report?
In one of the last big winter storms, if you remember, the docks were really battered and destroyed by the wind. We're having a bit of an issue. Our claim was denied because they based it on storm surge, which is why I'm repeating it's wind. However, it looks like for the spring special town meeting, no matter what, and it won't be in time for this summer, we're going to have to put an article in, start working on those, so. And get those, because that's a big part of what we do down in Onset as well. So, ideally, we'd love to have the cement docks, because they lasted forever. They really did a great job, but we could give it more of a Band-Aid and go back with the wood and floats to get it done now. So just want to give everybody a heads up on that.
Mary, could you throw the light switch back there? Thank you.
Nope, wrong way.
That was good. I like that.
Somebody wants to get out of here. Okay, consent agenda. We have one set of executive session minutes.
No, we got the usual one you always skip.
Oh, liaison initiative reports?
Sure, you love doing that.
See if you're awake.
I'm good today.
Us.
Okay, what do we got?
We heard
this
enough about cannabis from you today, so.
I'm not giving you any more cannabis stuff. I'm done with it. It's been the last 3 weeks trying to take care of all of it. Last week on Thursday, I met at the YMCA. We've been talking about a possibility, long-term plan of a community center. So I met with the YMCA. I met with Peter Dunlop from the Council on Aging and Kenny Fons from the Boys and Girls Club. And we started initial discussions on how we can offer some Council on Aging programs at the Boys and Girls Club and at the YMCA. The end goal is to find ways where we can take the Boys and Girls Club organization, the YMCA organization, looking at their charters and their bylaws, et cetera, and find a way to meld the two together so they can function together as well. This is going to be the biggest challenge of taking two organizations and trying to make this work. It's happening in a few places out west. There has been a push for the Council on Aging to interact with Boys and Girls Clubs, and YMCA's, et cetera. The YMCA is planning long-term to put a big rec room in at the existing facility, add a full-service kitchen, which means they can bring programs in there. We have transportation from all over town through GATRA to bring people back and forth. I know if I had a choice at my age, I'm close enough, if I had to come here for a program, or if I go to the YMCA, you know where I'm going is the YMCA. The facility is, we have one of the best Ys in the whole Northeast region now. So it's coming, it's gonna be slow, it's gonna be it's gonna hurt for a while to make it work, because we have to get two major boards to sit down and actually, and I'm not gonna use the word think out of the box, but they're gonna have to really bang heads on this. So they're willing to work individually and together, but mostly in their own groups initially to get it going. So I'll let you know how it goes. It's the first time we've had anything in the last 7 years that Judy and I have been trying to get anything actually off the ground. So it's a positive change. So that was number one. There was Saturday up in Boston, there was a plastic bag seminar from the state, Jamie Eldridge, which is, I think he's a senator out in the west of part of the state, and one other rep actually has put through a ban on plastic bags as a statewide ban. It's limited into what you can do as far as the mill size, but it's the first step. It came out of committee 13-1 vote positive, which is the first time ever. So the next piece is going from the House to the Senate. So there is a chance in the next 60 days, possibly, you may end up with a statewide plastic ban box, whatever. So, I mean, it's there. That, if it passes, just so everybody knows, it basically voids everybody else's law that's on the books as far as plastic bags. And then if you want more, a tougher thing, you have to go back and pass it again. So that's another positive piece of news. Let's see what else we got. The other thing that came in, I got today, I apologize, but I think it's important to read it. Just give me a second. I turn my phone off when I'm here. Boom, boom, beam. I have to switch to my Gmail double account. Okay, this has to do with, this is a draft from Mass State Rail Plan available for public comment. South Coast Rail Draft Supplemental Environmental Impact Report to be released on Thursday. As everybody knows, the governor did make a statement last week when he announced his budget that after 30 years of frustration and nothing happening, he said he committed to getting the South Coast Rail project up and going one way or another. So what came out today was they did basically a plan for passenger and freight rail investment over the next 20 years. Highlights from the draft include a commitment to study east-west passenger rail service between Springfield and Boston, which doesn't do much for us. Okay. My Wi-Fi just died. In the town hall here anyways. Wonderful. All right, we're back and working again. The next piece was Springfield to Greenfield, which is the western part of the state, a pilot service program. I hope they have better luck than we did. Our pilot service program never got off the ground because they took it away from us. Continued commitment to both South Coast Rail Phase 1 in the near term and the project's full build in the long term. So that means that the state is basically going to go ahead with the project and start to do work, which basically means they're probably going to build a Middleborough station. Lakeville Station won't be decommissioned, but it'll become a minor station the way it's going to work. And they'll still work on the things with the Stoughton long-term program with electric cars. So Mass DOT has filed a draft supplemental environment impact report, an acronym, scheduled to be released Thursday for Phase 1 commuter rail service to New Bedford and Fall River. The latest filing is a key necessary towards the obtaining of a full design, permitting, and construction of the project. Phase 1 service from New Bedford and Fall River to Boston through Middleborough will seek immediate permitting and construction of the Southern Triangle, while the full build Stoughton corridor is being developed for South Coast Rail. There's more details and schedules coming, but this is a positive step. Phase 1, New Bedford to South Station will take approximately 91 minutes to travel, 7 round trips per day. The total cost of the project is only $935 million. And construction is scheduled to begin in the middle of 2019. What I'd like to do is contact State Rep Susan Williams-Gifford and also Bill Strauss, who is the chairman of the Transportation Committee, to see where the old Colony Rail, which is what we have, where we are in that particular group. So there's a possibility that we can wrap this up and actually get something before I die.
There you go.
That's it.
That it?
That's it.
Okay, now we, God.
Insurance, it's fine.
Consent agenda, we just have executive session minutes from September 12th?
We're not going to make
a
Mr.
motion to
Bowen's wife
accept and
happy?
hold.
No, not this week.
Make a
Bill.
motion to accept and hold the executive session minutes from September 12th, 2017.
Second.
A motion to accept and hold by Clerk Slavin, seconded by Selectman Scasiotti. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, it's unanimous. Okay, we have a motion to get out of here.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Okay, motion to adjourn by Selectman Scasiotti, seconded by Selectman Tropiano. All in favor, say aye. What, did I get that backwards?
Yeah, you got, it's close.
Oh, well.
It doesn't matter.
Not bad.
It doesn't,
We decided to.
It's all right.
All in favor, say aye. Aye, opposed, abstained, 400.
good night, Wareham.
We're done.
Thank you for hanging in there, folks.